welcome to the Mindset Michele TV show. We're so super excited for you to join us for yet another incredible episode with today's very special guest. Hello, Shantha.
Hi, Michele.
It's so wonderful to have you on the show today. And for those of you that aren't aware of who Shantha is, he's a very distinguished person. He's a professor, Shantha Rajaratnam. I practiced as well. Shantha Rajaratnam, and he's a deputy director of the Turner Institute, a professor of sleep and circadian rhythm, and he's also the academic head, I'll have to read this one, of the Monash School of Psychological Sciences. So highly accomplished, and we're so very grateful for you sparing the time to join us and to share some of your insights today, Shantha. To start with, though, please, that's a lot of titles, if you like, that I've just described, but we really want to get to know you, the person. How did you become so interested in sleep and become a global sleep expert? What was your journey to being a sleep expert?
Thanks, Michele, and thanks for having me on this program as well. I guess my story starts in Sri Lanka, where I was born. And Sri Lanka, we were happily living there, and my parents started to become concerned about our future and made the very difficult decision to leave the country, to leave everything that they were familiar with, and move to Australia. And there were two primary reasons that they decided to move. One was for safety and security, and one was for opportunity. And I think those two values have really stayed with me throughout my career, is the value that I've placed upon safety and security, and the gratitude that I've had for being in an environment that is safe and secure, and that you would never question your safety and security. And the second is the opportunity, that you wouldn't question the fact that you have just as much opportunity to achieve what you put your mind to as everyone else. And so those have been really integral guiding principles to my career. I came to Monash as an undergraduate student thinking that I would do something very different to sleep research. And so I came here with the intention of studying IT at one point, because there was this massive growth in the need for, people in the IT sector. I soon discovered that that wasn't where my passion was. Then I moved into studying law and commerce, actually. And I picked up psychology as a minor subject. And I guess one of those principles that stayed with me about pursuing opportunities as they came up was how I really developed the passion for psychology. I went to the lectures. I just developed this real love for the way in which psychology could really contribute to improving people's lives across the whole spectrum of human behaviors, personality, characteristics, also looking at the way in which there were different opportunities in the community, different parts of the community had, were grappling with challenges like mental illness and mental health concerns. And I saw that psychology would have tremendous promise in being able to make a significant contribution to the community around us. So I pursued right through to third year, and then decided that I wanted to do an honours year in psychology. And I was looking around at areas. And this is where sleep came in, because we had an undergraduate lecturer who was working in sleep and circadian rhythms. And I remember she made the comment that we spend a third of our lives asleep. If we live to the age of 90, we would sleep for 30 years. So either that means that sleep plays a pivotal function in maintaining our health, or it's the biggest mistake that evolution has ever made. because what could be this pivotal role that sleep plays? And at the time I went into the field, we knew very little about this function of sleep. So I expected at that point that this would be a very, very significant area of opportunity for research that would also have widespread implications for the way we live our lives, for the way we work, and for our health, including our mental health. And so that's how I embarked on the journey. I actually did my PhD at Monash as well, and I worked in animal models of sleep at that time. I then went on to do what we call postdoctoral study, which is after we finish our PhD, further training under the supervision or mentoring of an eminent person in the field. So I went to the UK and I worked at the University of Surrey at the Centre for Chronobiology, where I did further training in human sleep. And then I moved to the United States after that and worked at Harvard Medical School in the Division of Sleep Medicine and did further training and established a wide network of collaborators while I was working in the United States, and came back to Australia about 15 years ago, came back to Monash, and really, again, it was the guiding principle for me was opportunity. And when I came back to Australia and came back to Melbourne, I loved Monash because I could see that it was an environment in which if you had good ideas, this was an environment that really supported you to flourish in these ideas. And so I immediately set about establishing a large sleep program at the university and the affiliated hospitals, which is now one of the largest, if not the largest, in the country.
Wow, so much. Thank you, Shantha, for going through. And I really hear about the challenges that your family must have been facing, and I really want to acknowledge the courage to move. My family moved to Australia when I was very young, and I went back years later, and to leave friends and family and to do it for your children, for the opportunities, the second point that you raised, not just the safety and the security, but also those opportunities that you get that may or may not have been available in your original country in Sri Lanka, but in Australia they just abound. And then you so eloquently and beautifully shared your journey all the way from thinking about IT, which was very popular and is very popular again, all the way through to returning to Australia 15 years ago, kind of like that triumphant return home, and having established yourself in Australia, UK and America, now as a global sleep expert and setting up a sleep centre there in Melbourne for Australian sleep studies, again, is just a commendable achievement and something that I'm sure your family were very proud of, not just here, but back in Sri Lanka. Because you've had so much success and created so much success in your life, I'm interested now to hear, what do you think success today now means to you?
One of the things that I think is really helpful as a frame of reference is, and I wish I had done this earlier in life, is really look at what my core values are. Because I think when you want to define success, be it professional or personal achievement, you really need to examine what your true values are in order to really be able to feel a sense of accomplishment and success. So for me, I think as a researcher, success looks like that the research outcomes are reaching the population, the communities that would benefit from the research. Now, that sounds pretty straightforward, but actually it's very difficult to achieve. One of the major challenges in academic research is that we produce lots and lots of good research, high quality research, but it's the access to this research in the community is a real challenge. And so for me, a great sign of success is that my research has had an impact, a demonstrated impact in the community that benefits from that research. The second is that I chose to come and work in a university because I like to have the opportunity to shape the minds of the next generation of psychologists, of researchers that are coming through, of innovators that are coming through. I like to also be challenged by them as well, because there is nothing better for me than having young minds questioning old ideas. And that gives me the motivation to continuously, refine, revise my thinking as well. And so for me, success also is the extent to which I'm able to influence the next generation of thinkers, of innovators that are coming through my university and universities more globally as well, but also that I'm able to refresh, revise, and ensure that my ideas reflect contemporary knowledge and contemporary thinking.
Yeah, just to summarize, though, what I'm hearing is that success means to you not just research for the sake of research, but the community have access to it. And the second point around the success is around being around people that you can pass on that information to. So the next generation of researchers, the next generation of people who got the next big ideas, but also how their ideas challenge your ways of thinking. With so much success and so much ability to influence people doing this critical work, I'm interested, Lynn, in what do you think are some of the tips for success that you are role modeling or showing that you can share with our audience today?
Michele, I mean, it's a great question. And look, if I reflect on my career and my life, there have been clear defining moments that I want to kind of share with you as well. The first of these is that I actually underwent a period of significant illness in my life a few years ago, where I was actually in hospital for a long period of time, was there for about 5 months, and then I had a long period of recovery afterwards. Now, I'm one of these people who races to do everything, and I'm really one of these people who feels this passion about being highly productive and constantly doing stuff. And this period of my life caused me to step back and really reflect. And of course, I wouldn't say it was a positive experience, but I gained a lot from it. And one of the things I gained from it was I learned a lot about myself, about my identity, about my values, about what it is that really drives me in the work that I do and gives me energy as well. So my first tip for people is to take the time to understand who you are and what drives you and what gives you energy. And I've actually started telling my children this as well. My children are now, entering adulthood. And I keep talking to them about how important it is to really understand their identities. Because as a leader, there is no template. I wish someone told me this, but there is no template to just step into. You've got to look at your own values, your own identity, and you have to take those strengths as your toolkit into your leadership role.
I really hear what you're talking about there, about taking the time to understand yourself. And I think social media now means that the current and future generations are going to be so much on the outside in terms of looking out and watching and engaging with things externally. So I really hear that to become a leader, there is no template. So going inside yourself and understanding yourself, I think, is a really fabulous suggestion around how to create that successful mindset, starting with yourself, starting with understanding who you are, what your values are. And I can hear you've mentioned values a few times, how important they are to you, and how they're kind of like that rudder for the direction of what you do and where you go in life.
Absolutely, Michele. And I guess the second tip I would give is, and it relates to the experience that I've had where I've always worked incredibly hard for in the area that I'm in academic research and leadership. But I also have come to realize the importance of balance. And I'm going to bring in the sleep research at this point, because sleep is an incredibly important component of that balance in life. And so my next tip is that as a part of having a kind of a view of life that is really holistic and really balanced, we need to think of the different segments of our day in terms of what happens at night is as important as what happens during the day. And so what happens at night is critically important for our recovery, for repair, for consolidation of memories, for all kinds of neuronal processes that are critical to our functioning while we're awake. And so what happens while we're asleep also is critical for processes like our metabolism and so on. So the next tip I would give is recognizing the critical importance of rest, recovery, and sleep, the role sleep plays in this. Many people understand that when we talk about a balanced life that's focused on well-being, we are talking about physical activity and nutrition. I'm suggesting a third equally important dimension, and that is about our healthy sleep practices as well.
I completely agree with you, and the research that I've understood in this space has also said exactly the same thing about the metabolism. There's so many different recovery elements that the body physically goes through when it's resting and repairing at night. I'm also fascinated because whenever I speak with sleep specialists, I'm interested in what's the recommended then amount of sleep per night?
So the expert bodies talk about for adults, because we know that as we move through different phases of our lives, the amount of sleep we need may change. But for adults, it's typically between 7 to 9 hours. Now, we know that less than 6 hours is associated with a number of adverse health outcomes in mainly the epidemiological kind of studies that have examined this. It's also important to remember that there are individual differences. Some people report needing more sleep than others, and this is perfectly normal and expected in the community, but somewhere between 7 and 9 is regarded as the optimal amount of sleep for an adult.
And can you explain, because I again think that, mental health and a positive mindset can also start with how you wake up in the morning. So say that you do get your between 7 to 9 hours sleep, but you can wake up groggy or you can wake up perfectly alert. I've heard that this is to do with the circadian rhythm. So is there something that you can share around how people can help kind of influence that in their lives as well?
Sure, Michele. So circadian rhythms are 24-hour variations in many aspects of our behavior and physiology. And one of the strongest manifestations of that is our pattern of sleepiness across the day. Now, it peaks overnight when we're programmed to be asleep, and it's supposed to be at its lowest point during the day when we're programmed to have a period of wakefulness. Now, sometimes there can be disruption to these circadian processes. These disruptions can take a variety of forms. Some people have abnormal timing of their circadian rhythms, meaning that this clock in the brain that regulates circadian rhythms is set too late in time or too early in time. And that causes you to be out of sync with when you're supposed to be awake and when you're supposed to be asleep. A little bit like when you travel across time zones and experience jet lag. Now, as living in modern society, we actually find that our sleep-wake cycle may actually shift around a bit just because of social pressures and social constraints, work commitments as well. All of this disrupts our internal circadian rhythms and can cause us to not, even if we've tried to have an optimal amount of sleep, to not feel alert and awake during the day. Another reason for feeling like that when we first wake up in the morning is that there may be an underlying sleep problem or sleep disorder. Sleep disorders are incredibly common in the population, in the community, but they remain largely unrecognized, undiagnosed, and therefore untreated. And so that's another reason why people may be feeling a sense of fatigue or tiredness during the daytime as well.
Wow, and I'm sure you have so much more, having done so much research and studies in it. These tips are so very, very valuable. So thank you for sharing them and for answering all of my very layperson questions around why do I wake up some mornings, perfectly relaxed, and other mornings, like, it's like dragging myself out of bed. But I hear what you're saying about, it may just be some sort of disruption, like momentary disruption to my circadian rhythm, or it can also be some sort of sleep disorder. It's interesting, like the phenomenon of that circadian rhythm where like there's the 3 o'clock kind of phenomenon where your energy levels tend to drop after eating lunch, etc. So I'm not a specialist or anything in that space, but I do know that it affects me and it affects most people I know. And so it kind of nicely goes back to what you were saying as the first point around knowing yourself. And so knowing how much sleep between the 7 to 9 hours that you might need, also being aware that you may need more, if you're under a lot of stress with work, etc. And also understanding that sometimes there is just life disruptions. And so you, like everybody else, your rhythm will get thrown out for a little bit, but to come back to some sort of regular routine and to support that.
Michele, absolutely right. And the fact that you have so many questions about sleep reflects the fact that everywhere I go, I've had the real privilege of working in leadership roles in the major professional organizations in sleep, the Australasian Sleep Association. I'm a past president of that association, and I'm now the chair of the Sleep Health Foundation, which is the national advocacy organization for sleep health. And everywhere I go, Michele, everyone has an experience on sleep, because after all, we all sleep, and we all love to share our stories, including our stories about sleep. And people love to talk about it. And I think it's a really healthy practice because of the fact that we can share experiences, we can share what works, what doesn't work, and we can also recognize that not every night, it's unrealistic to expect that every night we're going to have a perfect, refreshing night of sleep. There are going to be environmental factors that are going to disrupt our sleep. There's going to be behavioral factors that are going to disrupt our sleep, and so on. So it's sometimes helpful to just have that forum in which we can just talk, about our sleep experiences as well.
And I think that I'll take that as a third tip, to be around other people and talk about your sleep experiences. It might be a bit of an unusual topic for conversation, but I think you're right. Just like we focus on physical health and mental health, also having that recovery and that sleep. So the rest, recovery and sleep. I really like how you've added sleep into that and made it something that is really, something that when people are thinking about, well, how do I create a positive mindset? Also remembering that if 30 years out of your 90 years is actually spent sleeping, then one of the keys to creating that positive mindset will actually be how well you make the quality of that sleep. So the environmental factors that you mentioned, and also having some sort of routine around the sleep so that your body and your circadian rhythm gets into that routine and kind of knows, oh, now's the time to be asleep, now's the time to be awake, now's the time to be really focused because I'm working, but now's the time to relax a bit because I'm eating. So having those prompts for your body, and I really appreciate how you're sharing that this conversation is getting bigger and bigger here in Australia.
Well, Michele, absolutely. And the two other quick benefits of having this as a key topic for discussion in the community, one is to increase our sleep health literacy, just as much as we want to increase the literacy of other health areas. Sleep health is one of those areas that the community needs to understand how to maintain healthy sleep habits, how to recognize symptoms of sleep disorder as well. The second is one that you just touched on, is that we see sleep health as a gateway to understanding general health, because poor sleep can be a manifestation of so many other areas of our health, including our mental health. And sometimes we find that people can more easily share their experiences about sleep health than they can about, for example, their mental health. And it just provides an opening to getting into a person's kind of, personal health circumstances, because it's an easy topic that people often feel comfortable talking about.
Wow, so much profound knowledge and awareness that you're sharing. I'm so incredibly grateful about your tips about knowing yourself, about having that sleep-life balance. I've heard of work-life balance, but I'll now create sleep-life balance.
Great.
That sleep health literacy, and your final wonderful point about using sleep, because not just for when you're sharing with people about how your sleep quality is, but also because mental health is so important nowadays, listening to others and really, if somebody is having a hard time, I think that's a great suggestion about asking them how they sleep rather than asking them how they are, because you may be able to find out, like you so beautifully put from their response, what's really going on by not actually asking directly what's really going on. And if somebody asks you what's going on and you're a bit uncomfortable about it, perhaps talking about your sleep as well. So that can work both ways.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we're nearly there with the show today, but Shantha, what's the best way for people to actually get hold of you?
Well, I'm very happy to be contacted through the Sleep Health Foundation. And so we have a lot of really helpful information on our website and information about sleep that people can access, and they can contact me through that. And then in my research and leadership capacity at Monash, I'm also happy to be contacted through the Turner Institute for Brain and Mental Health. For those on social media and LinkedIn and so on, I actively use LinkedIn as well. So that's another great way to contact me as well.
Fabulous. And our final question for today, what advice, given, it's another migrant story of that really how wonderful and how lucky we are here in Australia. But what advice might you give to your younger self?
So I think the identity point is really critical. So understanding who you are, understanding where your strengths are, and what gives you energy and passion, because this is what's going to drive you and give you the opportunity to make a significant impact wherever you go. And one of the things that I would love to have told myself is think about the pieces of work that you come away from feeling energized. And think about the pieces of work or the activities you undertake in life where you come away feeling that you've had the energy sapped out of you. And these are good indicators of where your passion really lies and what is going to sustain your career in a way that is going to continue to drive success and keep you motivated, and also to avoid that kind of feeling of burnout, which is so common in our professional networks these days. And so that's the first thing I would say, is really understand identity, what drives you, what your passion. The second is, I would say, as a part of your career journey, think about how you're going to best utilize the mentors around you. I have really benefited from having such significant, strong mentors, and mentors at different career stages as well. And I still have mentors that continue to guide me, and I can bounce things off, especially as you progress through stages of leadership where you become more and more senior. I think you need mentors even more, because the opportunity to really talk through leadership challenges, career challenges, become less and less in your professional world. And so therefore, relying on and actively seeking mentoring has been a really successful part of my strategy as well. So I think those two things I would really point to as piece of advice I would give myself as a younger person.
And what wonderful pieces of advice. Surrounding yourself with mentors so that you have people that have been down that pathway before, and also understanding what fills you up and what drains you. I think that they're two really wonderful suggestions and tips about that you would give to your younger self as well. But Shantha, that's it for today. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you very, very much for having me on the show, and sleep well.
I love that. Sleep well. Well, I'm sure that the viewers after watching today will have a lot more tips and a lot more to think about as they go to bed tonight. But for now, it's the end of the show. So from my heart to your heart, be great, be fabulous, and be you.